Rebels and Rule Breakers, it has been a little while since I last did this StreamYard thingy thing into the group and, in fact, on my own personal profile at the same time. We've got 4 of you watching us already. Give us a little shout and tell us who you are. We've got Tracy, hey. And I know we've got Helen Shanners, yes. And Nadia, hello. Good to see you. Oh, we've got 5 people now. Give us a little comment. If you haven't given StreamYard permission, you might need to either do that or just put your name at the bottom of each comment. Otherwise, it just says Facebook user. But welcome to our live stream. I'm particularly excited about this one because for the very simple fact that I am going to be joined any moment now. Hey, Joe. Yeah. By my corker of a Bezzy mate, Ripley Fletcher. Here she is now.
I look like I'm sitting on space half an hour. We've been doing this face for 5 minutes.
5 whole minutes.
We don't know why. We've got no idea.
Oh my God. So we're here to talk about all sorts of shenanigans tonight. Ripley and I have done lots of lives together. It's always good fun and we always get right to the heart of things. And also we fuck about a little bit. So that's fun too. Yeah. I have promised people on the description that we may talk about chicken trumpets and also jazz duck, but that's maybe for later.
Yeah.
So we are here to talk about something called spiritual bypassing, and this
not just here. We were going to be in other places as well, weren't we, tonight?
We were going to be in other places.
We were going to simultaneously.
We were.
Broadcast into 2 groups.
Yeah.
2 groups, but apps and technology have
failed us. They have. They've completely scuppered us. That's the one. Yeah. So we were going to be in a group. Hey.
I've always said stupid. Shit, is it scuppered?
Oh, okay. Well, I can give room for that. That's okay. Let's talk a little bit about who you are first of all, for people that don't know you. I've put a little ticker tape at the bottom there to say that you are from Smoky Quartz readings, in fact, and to give you a follow on. Your Insta game is strong. And actually, the group that we were going to be living into is UK Witches Circle, which is a very large group that Ripley manages with sheer finesse and skill and beautiful humanity. So if you are that way inclined, you might want to go check out UK Witches Circle.
Yes, you don't have to be a witch, funnily enough.
You don't have to be a
witch. The way I often describe it, it's for magical practitioners or magical people that are interested in spirituality. So not everybody in there has got a pointy hat. We're not hexing things. We're not setting fire to dogs and shit like that.
And you don't all have a black cat. So tell us about Smoky Quartz readings and what you do for a living before we go into it.
It's been a little while now. It must be about 18 months, maybe a bit longer now. And Helen's saying she loves UK Witches. Thank you, Helen. So I started in this woo-woo world kind of by accident. Life pulled the rug from under me, luckily, and set me on this path that I realise I've always been on. And I am a full-time, I say tarot reader. It's not tarot that I read, but people have heard of that. So full-time reader, spiritual coach, and medium, and that sort of interestingness. And I also do a little bit of social media stuff on the side as well. I mean, we know about the group. I recently qualified as a social media manager because I spend that much time on social media.
That was no mean feat, by the way. That was quite a challenge, wasn't it? It wasn't a mere sniff of a commitment.
Yes, because I thought if I'm gonna work on that group and work and run that group, then I wanted to do it to the very best of my ability. So I've put that effort in, and it is paid off. I'm very, very glad it has.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You've done so well with that. Hey, Carl Havey is here. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Giggle Shack Man.
All right, Carl. Final night tomorrow night. No, final night Saturday night. See you there.
Nice one.
He'll know what we mean.
All right, so we're going to talk about something called spiritual bypassing tonight, which I know is something you're really passionate about, and I am as well. This is a quite a woo-woo term, but it's actually relevant for people who aren't in the woo-woo world as well, because there's a toxicness about it that we want to rebel against, right? So, first of all, let's define what spiritual bypassing is. So I've looked this up on Googly, and it says the following: spiritual bypassing is a tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. Tell us what it is in your words, Ripley, because that will probably land in a little bit more of a relatable way maybe than that does for some people.
So as in any sort of, let's say, professional area or anything like that, you've got a lot of jargon. So in the spiritual community, there's loads of jargon, okay? And it always makes me laugh because I see it very much as gatekeeping. So when, you must ground yourself, darling, ground yourself. People say that sort of like, how? What do you mean? Be specific. Don't just, use these terms. Spiritual bypassing, and there's an irony here. It's a term that it really talks about when we use our beliefs as an excuse quite often, or as a way to hide from the real world very often. And it's something that in sort of my woo-woo world, I see this a lot. I see it a lot. For example, we'll often hear, and we often joke in the group about, you'll get fucked by a retrograde, and we'll say, oh my God, guys, no, it's a retrograde. You can't be blamed for being
by a retrograde.
Yeah, there's always a retrograde. It's constant. Sometimes you get a few, and it's where planets align and turn you into a prick. And that is what we use as an excuse, or say, I'm not doing anything in the next few days because it's full moon. But what you often, in all seriousness, something that I see quite often, and people in our community, I'm sure, when my guys watch it on Catch Up, they'll be nodding, that people will often completely bypass the real world and focus on spiritual practices. So, for example, someone saying that they're having a really bad time because they've been cursed, or they're having a really, really bad time because of their inner child, or they can't possibly deal with that in their life because of a past life event. And it's not that those things aren't real, because they are, but sometimes it's about, right, I must push aside real life, and I will use that spiritual practice, or I use that spiritual idea as an excuse for me to not face it, because that's what it comes down to. It's called bypassing because we're trying to not face something, and it becomes very toxic. And the thing that you hear all the time, and you see it on t-shirts, is good vibes only. What?
Right, and I think it's not realistic, is it, for a start? And it's also, it puts a lot of pressure on people. That it makes you, what is inherently attached to that in really toxic way is you're not allowed to feel anything.
You're not allowed
to be angry. You're not allowed to be upset or hurt or depressed or whatever, because you've got to PMA it.
And it's something.
Sometimes you have to just sit in the mud, don't you, and wallow in it to healthily process it for a little while.
Interestingly, one of the biggest communities I found the whole good vibes only to be really prevalent and very toxic was in the yoga community.
Right.
And it was like only good vibes on your mat. And it's like, right, yeah, in yoga, they say that everything that you can experience in your life, you can experience on the yoga mat. Okay, which at one point I wouldn't have understood that. I do now. So if that's the case, and we're saying it's good vibes only, surely a load of your life is just suddenly swiping it away, because it's quite often that I know I've had this experience several times. I know you have, Emma, because we've talked about it. That doing what I do for a living, especially when I'm supporting people, and I give very uplifting readings, and it's very much about moving people forward and motivating people. And when people are sort of trying to push to the side how they actually feel, it's shitty. And at times I've thought, okay, I'm having a really bad day, or there's something that I'm really worried about, or there's something that's getting me down. But I have to push that to one side and I have to good vibes only it, because surely I shouldn't have a bad day. I shouldn't have any of those issues because of what I do for a living. So it really at times has given me imposter syndrome. And then it's sort of completely turned, and we realized that without me having those experiences, without me feeling shitty, without me having depression at times, or anxiety at times, or having a panic attack because I've got to put the shopping away, true story, then how am I supposed to help anyone else if I can't experience those things and be grateful, which is a difficult thing to do. You're not grateful at the fucking time.
Grateful for the shit. Yeah, as well as
Grateful for the shit.
Yeah.
And that in itself, in a way, sounds like good vibes only. Oh, I'm really grateful for this opportunity of challenge, yeah. But it is true. You don't have to like it.
And you don't have to be grateful for it in the moment either. You know,
No,
sometimes
absolutely.
you reflect, you know, reflectively or retrospectively kind of go, okay, that was awful, but I now know why I needed it, and I know what I've got from it.
Yeah.
And I know why, you know, I know why or how to make certain decisions now as a result of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've definitely
try and not only hide from it ourselves, we try and really take it off each other as well. And it's something that we instinctively do for people when we're trying to help them, is we try and remove that challenge. We try and make them feel better. And sometimes there is not.
And this is Highland, by the way. This is really interesting for me because, you know, there's been a number of conversations I've had recently with people close to me, and sometimes either actively asked the question or kind of processed what the answer needs to be. The question of this thing that you're telling me about that you want to offload, you know, or download or kind of work through. Do you want me? And actually, Helen has asked me this as well. Do you want me to just listen, or do you want me to give you advice or feedback, or, you know, be critical friend, or what you know, what
simply your solution?
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I've certainly been in relationships in the past where there's the other person's been the fixer or trying to be the fixer, and I'm like, I just need you to hear me. I just need you to create a safe space for me and listen to what I'm saying and acknowledge it and empathize, or, you know, something. Don't judge it. And we do. I think there is a lot of, you know, this for me falls into the spiritual bypassing thing that you were saying about we try and take it off each other. Sometimes we don't want a solution. Sometimes we just want to be heard. And that's really important.
It really is. And it's sort of, it's ingrained in us that we help each other because people are good. And we often think, and I say think, not feel, we often think that what we need to do with that is to take away someone's problem. And as stupid as that sounds, we often don't have the right to do that. We always think if someone tells us that they're having a bad time, that gives us the right to remove their problem, and it does not. And that sounds a bit weird, but I know the thing where this really sort of cemented for me is, and I'm going back, God, I don't know, it's longer, it's more than 6 months, it's well more than 6 months that this happened, where I had a bad few days, and it was a really bad few days. And I just sort of went from being okay to plummeting almost overnight over something quite small. And I remember the next day thinking, like, what I've got to do is I need to speak to someone. I'll choose the right person to speak to. I need to communicate with people. I need to talk to somebody, and someone will say the right thing for me, and it'll make me feel better. And that was my instinct. But the overall feeling that I had was I felt very isolated and very alone. And then realized that I didn't need to feel those things. I was supposed to feel those things. That was the predominant tool that I needed to get through what was happening with me, was to do it on my own. And I made a little plan, and I thought, right, if I still feel the same in 48 hours, I'll talk to someone. I don't know if I point in the right direction. I thought I'll give it 48 hours and see how I feel at that point. But during that 48 hours, I'm not going to think, right, I'm going to do something really nice to cheer myself up, or, you know, I'll go out for a nice walk, and I'll do something really nice.
Or pamper myself, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah. And I thought, no, I am going to feel the fuck out of this. And it wasn't a case of...
That's a t-shirt in the making.
Yeah, it wasn't what am I going to do to make myself better. It was almost, what am I going to do to support the fact that I feel shit? To sort of go with the fact
honor
that
it.
Honor that shit.
Yeah.
And it was a lot less than 48 hours. And I started, as soon as I made the decision that that is what I was going to do, I started to, it's sort of, the thing that had originally pissed me off seemed to completely disappear, and something else appeared. And I'm like, why is this come? And it's because I've given the opportunity to go, come on then, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. And this subject popped up and bubbled away. And I'm like, oh, right, okay, that's what it is. I can see what it is. Because I hadn't bypassed it, I'd leaned into it. And that term, leaning into it, is what I've just described, that rather than trying to remove feeling bad by distracting myself, I embraced feeling bad and was happy to sort of sit around on the sofa wallowing and eating chocolate and just thinking, fuck it, and cry. And it just moved that whole process so much faster and so much more effectively. Because if I'd have tried to bypass it, if I had done, which we all do all the time, if I'd have bypassed that, that subject would have gone back in. And then it'd have popped out.
And of course it would. It's going to
it's just
chase you until you look at it right in the eyes. Thank you, Facebook user, by the way. Who are you? Would love to know.
Thank you, Facebook user.
So tell us a little bit more about why this whole topic kind of has come up for you recently, and what.
I think as soon as I realised what happened, because we often feel that in our life, and I'm just going to slip into woo-woo mode here, we talk about being in our world, we talk about being on a soul path. And that, you know, these things that we need to learn, these lessons that we need to learn. And I've almost stepped back from that and realised it's not about lessons that we have to learn and then with the boxes ticked. It's processes that we have to work with. And that isn't goal orientated. That isn't
K, by the way, the user was K.
It's not goal orientated. It's not you have to get to the end product. It's you have to work in a process. And as you start to recognize that process, it works for you. So that when I had that really bad time and came through it, I then wanted to talk about it. And I remember I actually went live into the UK Witches group and did a little video and talked about it. And because it is a group of fucking joyful people, loads of people were sort of interacting with me, and loads of people were like, you don't need to feel isolated. I'm here. I got loads of lovely personal messages from people asking me if I was okay, asking me, you know, do you need to talk, all that sort of thing. Regardless of how much I said, oh my God, an amazing thing has happened, I've had this experience and come out the other side, it's still our knee-jerk reaction to say, oh fuck, are you okay?
You.
Like,
Yeah.
I am very okay. I'm very okay. And it's seeing that process. It's, as I say, it's not goal orientated. It gives you tools. So as something else pops up, because something else will always pop up because we're having a human experience. So as it does, it gives you the process to be able to work with that again, regardless of what the subject is, regardless of the outcome, regardless of any of that. That is almost irrelevant. Once you sort of try that process, the process will work for you.
Yeah.
And it was only when you actually do it that you can see it.
Yeah.
And it's only when you experience it and chance, okay, I'm not going to try and get out of this. I'm happy to feel worse. It's only when you do that that you realize, this is how it actually works. It's probably like when somebody describes to you doing a parachute jump. You're only going to take that into a certain account. You're only going to understand that, even if you're watching a video, even if you're on a live link with somebody. It's only when you jump out the plane yourself that you know what it's like to jump out the plane. So it's only when you work with that process that you realize what it's like, what it entails, how it feels, and how fucking successful it is, and how useful it is, and what an absolute gem of an experience that is, to see how this can support your life. And then you realize that there is no fear of leaning in to something. When something feels shit, lean into it. When you're worried about something, lean into it. You don't have to get rid of it to be, God, don't focus on anything bad. Do.
Yeah.
It starts to dissolve.
That I freaking love this phrase that Shanley's come up with, but I don't know why I keep calling you Shanley, not your actual name, Helen. This leaning into thing was something I thought you triggered for me there.
The image of Michael Jackson in The Smooth Criminal.
What? Oh yeah.
Probably wasn't.
Just this being, there was something else, but it's gone. It'll come back to me. The idea of being comfortable with discomfort is, I think, massive, because I know there's so Kay will recognise this phrase that Peter Sage often says: life is not a comfort-centric experience; it's a growth-centric experience.
Yeah.
And I totally believe that, but of course we do everything we can to get away from discomfort and pain and suffering all the time. And
that's this risk assessment software that does that.
Yes, yeah.
Oh God, don't allow that to happen. Don't do anything, because this risk assessment software, as you'll often hear me call it, doesn't care about you growing. It just wants to keep you alive. So the idea of you growing and you moving up, you leveling up, is a bad thing. It is a risk to your life.
Yeah.
So because of that, it will say to you, don't do anything that's a risk. Don't do anything that might be a challenge. Don't do anything that will make you feel like that, because ultimately what this software will say to you is you are not enough. You aren't good enough. You're not bright enough. You're not thin enough. You're not rich enough. You're not anything enough. You won't fit in. People won't like you. It won't work. You'll fail again. And all of these things will come up. And we're very failure aversive.
Yeah.
We've got real fear of failure. Definitely. So
when we say leaning in, then What do we mean by that? How do we lean in to discomfort? Like, how do you? I suppose it goes back to this kind of thing we said up front about we often use terms and jargon like ground yourself, darling. But how do you actually do the leaning in, like without it being a buzzword thing?
What would leaning in look like?
Yeah.
You were watching me leaning in. And
I'd love some comments from people on this one, by the way. I'd love some comments from people, perhaps to tell us how they do their leaning in, or how they get to grips with their discomfort.
For me, the way I lean in is to allow myself to be bored.
Right.
Because we're very good, we tend to distract ourselves. And that's what we're spiritually bypassing, is we distract ourselves, really take yourself out of that situation, put yourself in something else. So my literal action that I take when I'm leaning into something is I wander about the house.
Right.
I mill about, and I'll move from the chair to the kitchen, go outside for a cig, have a cup of tea, listen to some music, knock about, and just maybe have a bit of a browse on social media. But I don't do anything that takes much attention, because I want to leave room to wallow. And I will cry, I'll talk out loud, I'll play music that I know will trigger me. I could watch something that I know will trigger me. And it's almost like saying, come on, emotions, out you come. It's rather than saying push them down, this is no, pull them out. So trying to do as little as possible. And that isn't possible for everybody, because we work from home on our own timetable, so that's completely possible. But it can also look like getting into bed and pulling the covers over your head. The things that you think you shouldn't do. Getting drunk.
Because again, we're in this kind of world where there's a lot of masculine response to that. Like, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps, get on with it, go do a thing, take action. And that might be great for a lot of people, but it also may be the very thing that stops them feeling what they need to feel. And I'm thinking about how I do my thing now. So if I've got something that's consuming me, my immediate response is I want to clear space. And like if I've got something, an appointment or a commitment, the first reaction I will want to have is to cancel it or get it done with, and so I can then come and find the space that I need.
We often feel very guilty about giving ourselves space, because that in itself is a term that people think, what does that mean? And cancelling plans, fine, because when you mentioned there about masculine and feminine energy is very much about being very productive, getting things done, taking action, bang, 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 being very busy. Whereas feminine energy is a lot more about seeing the bigger picture. It's about rest. It's about slowing down, because that is when your intuition is at its highest. That's when your creativity can often kick in. So when we instinctively lose motivation, suddenly we don't want to do things, suddenly we don't want to do people, and we call it depression, or we call it laziness, because it's been drummed into us that we have to be productive, because that makes us a very useful workforce. So the idea of taking time to do fuck all, and that fuck all could be a whole, 3 serial killer box sets, or a load of crochet, or walking the dog, or excuse me, rearranging your knicker drawer, I don't know, whatever it is. Having that time to do a bit of whatever you want to do, whatever that is, isn't celebrated. It isn't honoured. And it's something to feel guilty for, and it really is. And that's because culture has pushed that into us. You're just being lazy. The idea of being lazy is to make us feel guilty that we aren't a productive team member or workforce. So that's where that's come from. And when we go to that feminine energy, that we actually give ourselves space to feel the feels. And it's got nothing to do with gender. The masculine and feminine energy has got nothing to do with gender whatsoever.
Something you said earlier as well about things that you and I have both experienced in our careers. You know, it's not just the pressure to get on with it and pull your socks up and be positive. There's the pressure to not be vulnerable as well. So, you know, we've both worked together as learning and development consultants for a long time, and we were doing a lot of work around kind of, you know, soft skills, mindset, behavioural kind of stuff. And, you know, we're imparting this wisdom to people. And I've always been a massive believer that if you are a teacher of some kind, a wisdom giver, you know, a space creator, whatever that is, you shouldn't ever make the mistake, I think, of trying to be infallible or appearing to be so, because A, people see right through it, and B, it's so self-destructive trying to, you know, role model the right behaviors. And, you know, if you're in a corporate environment, it's very much you must role model. And yeah, I believe that, but I think part of role modeling is being a human being who is fallible, that sometimes makes mistakes, that sometimes can't bring their A game 100% of the time, that needs support from other people, and that has to say, I'm sorry, I can't do it today. And that the pressure, you know, this is one of the premises of how I hopefully, you know, show up in Rebels and Rule Breakers, particularly, that, you know, multiple people have seen me cry online multiple times, and I will make mistakes, and I will, you know, sometimes I'll be here consistently, and other times I won't be, and I'm not beating myself up about that ever, because I'm role modeling that to other people, that you can be a bit sometimes if you need to be.
For sure. And I think that is something that coming out of the corporate world and living to your own rules is you know, it's a scary thing, because you suddenly got no safety net. And that's not just about sort of job and financial, that's, you haven't got somebody to ring anymore and say, what do I do now? And finding yourself in that position is something that I was always aware that would probably be quite scary. It's not actually as scary as I thought, that side of it, because I can motivate myself. But it's that feeling that I don't have to toe the party line anymore. I don't have to fit into a mold, and which society very much gives us, because no matter what job you're doing, pretty much no matter what job you're doing, I'm trying to think of something here, you have to be there at a certain time, look a certain way, speak a certain way, give a certain amount, and that isn't the case when you walk away from that. So that gave me the opportunity to absolutely role model me. And one thing that I loved, and I've always done this to an extent because I've always been a bit believer in it, is you don't have to make up fucking excuses for being human. You don't have to. I was always a big fan of, I've always loved conference calls, because it was a fantastic way to observe humanity at its worst, you know. People would say certain things and we all knew it was a lie. We all knew when somebody said, sorry, can you say that again, it's a bad line, or you were breaking up, means I was not fucking listening to you. So I was happy to go on a call and
I'm in a tunnel.
Yeah, I wasn't listening then. I'm not going to listen. Say my name a few times and then I will listen. Apart from that, I am making lasagna.
I mean, there's been loads of times. There's been loads of times I've had conversations with people and gone, I'm really sorry. I no offense, but I honestly just didn't hear what you said.
Gone.
Because
it's that vulnerability, being able to do that, because there is that fear of how will I be perceived if I'm vulnerable, and
Yeah.
that only comes from the bullshit story that we're telling ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to a friend yesterday who was really worried about a situation that she was in. She was worried about how people would view her in that situation. And it's not that she'd done anything wrong, actually, she'd done something really well. And we had the conversation of, listen, this might be a shock. To all intents and purposes, no one gives a fuck.
Because too busy thinking about themselves.
Because they have their own life.
Yeah.
We are, all of us, we are just side characters in anyone else's life. Even when you look at your very closest people, yeah, they're important to you, but you are you are the only one that is number one in your world, no matter how much you tell yourself you're not. Everybody is actually at the front of the queue. So we tell ourselves stories about what other people are thinking of us. People might think this, people might think that, they might see this, they might say that, what if this? And we tell ourselves a story that all of these fucking people, like there's a whole horde of people out there thinking, oh my God, she wore that top 2 days running. And you think, fuck, no one gives a shit. And I don't mean that as in no one cares about you, but people aren't worried about what
People
you're doing.
don't spend as much time as you think consumed about.
Oh God, so much of our behaviour is based on what we think other people think of us. And it's not even what people think of us, it's what we think other people think of us, based on our own fucking risk assessment software.
Yeah.
So it's going to sound bad, and we react to that story without it being at all true. And it can be really debilitating.
Will you share with us one of my favourite things that you teach people about, which is the thing, you catch yourself having the story run through your head and you do the whole move yourself away.
How we do it. So something that I talk to people a lot about, and this is a lot of the time during readings, because I have a lot of these conversations over and over again with people in readings, and it's we talk shit to ourselves, we tell ourselves stories all the time, and that is the human condition. We communicate through narrative.
Yeah.
Pretty much exclusively, whether you realise that or not. It's all about the story, because that is how our species has existed. And the way it does that is this risk assessment software, which I'm always reticent to use the actual word because it's called ego, because people misunderstand the word ego. That's how good ego is at hiding. It's fucking lied to us about what it is. So it talks. This has verbal capacity. So when you close your mouth and speak in your mind, you can hear a voice.
Yeah.
It's this, okay? And it talks to you quite freely, and you think it's you. It is not you. It's a piece of software. So it will tell a story that, oh my God, you've read something on Facebook. This is what they meant. Oh my, this is going to happen. They must mean that. Well, this is fucking, before you know it, you've gone from nothing to this story, and you are reacting to that story, and you've blown it out of proportion, and that can be completely consuming. And a lot of people live in that consumed world of how badly they're treated, or how people are talking about them, or how shit their life is, purely based on the stories that they tell themselves that haven't come true at all, but they have told themselves they are. And a way to sort of break away from that is there's 3 things that you need to do. Firstly, it's catching yourself telling the story, because pretty much if you're awake, you're telling yourself a story. That is how we communicate with ourselves and other people. So something I did when I first worked with this is I had Post-it notes that I put up around the house saying, what story is she telling herself now? Not what story am I telling myself now? So the whole point of the Post-it note is, when you see it, you read it, you ask the question, you think, fuck yeah, I'm telling myself that this is going to be a nightmare because I'm not going to get to Lidl by 8 o'clock yet. You tell yourself that your life's going to fall apart. You haven't done that yet. And then The fact that you've talked about she or her or they is to separate you from that voice that's telling you the story, because you are the one that's listening. You aren't actually the one that's talking. You are the one that is listening, because your intuition doesn't have verbal capacity, it just has physical capacity.
Knowing, yeah.
Well, as soon as you see that, you ask the question, what story is she telling herself now? You've already started to separate away from that story. And it's something that I found that I instinctively did every single time, was when I realized I'd sort of go like that, or I'd move, I would find myself instinctively. And that is why I used to say, intuition doesn't have words, it has feeling. And I would move my body and go, and it was usually, what fucking shit is she on about now? What bollocks? And I would just immediately either start laughing or smiling. And those things psychologically can be enough to pop you out of a panic attack.
Yeah.
And it's separating away from that story that you're telling yourself, because you are reacting to a story that probably isn't even true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that foolproof? No. Does it take practice? Yeah, probably not as much as you think. But also, sometimes it's about, I have fallen down a hole.
Yeah.
I feel like utter shit. Okay. I'm prepared to feel that, because there's obviously something that I need to explore. There's something that I need to address, and there's something that I need to face. So rather than thinking I'm going to do anything I can to get out of this, I'm going to lean into it and feel it so that it can dissolve.
So when we were talking earlier about, people in certain communities or just any in society in general can sometimes try to make us spiritually bypass almost. So you've got a thing you're dealing with. It's you fall in the hole, using your analogy, and you need to feel the feels, but you've got people around you going, just be positive, crawl out of the hole, some kind of good vibes, cheer up, pull your socks up, it'll be okay tomorrow.
Yeah, but it's not as good as you think.
Yeah.
And all those things are very, very well-meaning and very...
Or even more constructively. So what can you do about this situation? I've done that many, many times with people. Okay, so what can you do? What are your options in this situation? And I think there is a place for that. But sometimes it's not.
There is a little bit further down the line.
When you've done your thing with it, when you felt the things, followed, whatever. So if you're in that situation, you've got people around you going, just be positive. What would your advice be as to how to deal with that?
That was sort of the linchpin for me, is when I realised with a panic that I felt isolated and alone in this little this big wobble that I was having. And then I realised that they weren't the problem, they were the vehicle. It wasn't saying, oh no, I feel isolated and alone. It was like, oh, dude, you need to be isolated and alone. Because I was being prompted to deal with those issues without trying to get somebody else to deal with them for me, or somebody else to talk me out of it. I needed to work through that process on my own. There's something that's happened loads of times. I feel a bit down, I'd speak to somebody, they'd say something that I think, oh yeah, that's made me feel a little bit better. It hasn't solved the problem, I'm still going to drop into it, but it's helped momentarily, and that's often a good thing. But you need time to do that on your own. You need time to work it through on your own, because quite often when you have an issue that you need to deal with, it doesn't often come as, you have to resolve this issue about your issues with sleeping. I don't know, I fucking made that up. it doesn't always come forward as that. It can feel like something completely different, and you have to dig around to find that that's the reason. Or you're having problems sleeping and you're doing everything you can. You're taking your Nitol and you're doing this and this to try and help you to sleep. The sleep is a symptom. It's the thing that you're worried about that's stopping you from sleeping. That's what you need to address.
Yeah, your root cause.
Yeah, and it's often from working through that on your own that helps you to get to the root of the problem. Because as soon as you actually see the problem, quite often you could be like, right, yeah, I can see why that's bothered me.
Yeah.
See why it's bothered me. That doesn't mean it cures it. By thinking, right, yeah, I'm worried about that. And I know that that is the problem. Doesn't instantly cure it. It just brings it to the forefront, so you can think, right, over time, I now know that that is what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
And then,
so how do you then deal with the people who are, trying to, with all the best intentions, trying to good vibes only you? Do you just tell them to fuck off, or smile sweetly and go, thank you very much for your help and advice?
It can look like not saying anything in the first place, which is good and not good. But it can also be setting some boundaries of, do you know what, I've got some shit going on at the moment and I know you're there for me and I just need a bit of time, and I'm going to give myself a day, or I'm going to give myself a few days because I just need to work through some shit on my own, and then I'm going to come to you and talk to you about it.
Yeah, because it's easy to be emotionally reactive in that state, isn't it? So I think it's actually quite useful for us to give that bit of advice.
Yeah. Sometimes you have
upset, down, triggered, whatever it is. Somebody saying, "Oh, just be positive, cheer up," is gonna make you want to rip your fucking heads off.
Don't worry about it. Oh, thank God.
Don't worry. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Something that might be a case that you have to keep reiterating that as well, because sometimes it's about reassuring somebody that, do you know what? I know I'm having a fucking nightmare here, but I know that I will come out of this, and I know it's something that I need to deal with. So please let me. Don't try and cure me. Let me have this so that I can come out on my own. Because it's, if somebody's wanting to hide themselves away, if somebody's wanting to work through some stuff, if someone's wanting to get pissed and howl at the moon, then do, and it's...
We've got no right to take that away from somebody.
We haven't. And it's such a fine line, because in a world where we're so much more aware of mental health, we're also hyper vigilant sometimes for mental health, and we think if we feel that someone's not okay, we need to do something about that. We need to stop them not being okay, and we need to step in. And sometimes what you do by doing that is keeping them perpetually in a situation of not being okay.
And that mental health first aid thing, right, as an example, all good, not dissing that kind of thing at all, but it's very, title is like, you're broken,
mend,
we need to fix you, this is an emergency, let's get you back to health as quickly as possible. And sure, we want to do that at some point, but
and it's interesting because the whole thing, one of the ways that I've recently started to describe spiritual bypassing is it's like putting a plaster on a snake bite.
Yeah.
That all we're doing is covering up the poison underneath. It's not going to mend. That's not going to cure. That's going to fester. So something that people, and we all do it, where we see someone that's struggling and we want to step in and help them. And it's often by, you're going to be fine, everything's going to be fine. And that is something that we often do. And especially for the people that are closest to us, we want to solve those problems because we want them to be okay. We want them to be okay. And we often, because of that, will take away their ability to resolve that problem themselves by either devaluing it or literally solving that problem for somebody So the issue that they were supposed to work through in the end, in the first place, will just display in another way, and it'll display in another way, and it'll display in another way. And you often hear parents talking about the kids saying, "I don't want them to make mistakes that I made." How are they going to learn? What's going to happen there? What? How are they going to learn then? Because it's not about taking away their opportunity to learn. It's about picking them up.
Yeah.
But letting them fall.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to say that is not a situation I'm in, because I'm a spinster, childless woman. But it's
childless woman.
Childless.
This makes me think about my mum and dad and the childhood I had, which was beautiful and loving and secure and all the good things. I was very fortunate, still am. And I remember a number of years ago having a conversation with my mum, because as you well know, in my 20s, I went through a phase where I was learning that not everybody was like my family culture, that people let you down, people have different value systems, people do shit to you, and I blew that out of all proportion and started to create in my head a very long list, actually, almost like a mental scroll of why people are shit every time someone did something wrong to me or to me. And a number of years ago, we were talking about this, my mum said to me, I sometimes wonder whether we failed you because we were too reliable. We were too much of a safety net. We didn't give you the opportunity to learn that sometimes people let you down, because we never let you down. And I'm like, wow, Mum, how can you ever be sorry for that? Like, that is not a thing you should ever apologize for. But I get where she's coming from, because I went through a whole world of pain and still do when people let me down. And I know that's there. I know that. Yeah. And so, I don't want to be like, oh, woe is me, I had such a gorgeous childhood and that's caused me trauma. That's a load of bullshit for a start.
Oh, yeah. Going back to one of the woo-woo terms I mentioned, and the man mentioned earlier, was inner child, which that shit's real, because that is the nurture as opposed to nature.
Yeah.
And that is what shapes us as we are growing up, and it gives us our grit.
Yeah.
And even with the most perfect childhood, we have events and things that happen that go straight into the subconscious and carry on growing with us, and it forms a sub-personality that often that little fuck will drive the bus, and we've got no idea that that's where a lot of our self-talk is coming from.
Yeah.
It's a 6-year-old kid who's actually driving our bus.
Yep.
And that's the way it's supposed to be.
Oh yeah. I speak to so many, sophisticated adults, business owners who have apparently got their shit together and running these incredible organizations and managing people and have all this stuff going on in their lives and all the trappings, and every single time I get into any kind of coaching situation, there is always stuff that comes up around, what your childhood experiences were and how that's contributed to the shit that happens to you in adulthood. And it always comes down to that, no matter what.
Yeah.
We're so simple in so many ways, and yet we complexify everything with stories and, like you said before, narrative and all of this. We've got a cracking comment here. I attract neurotic friends who think I can give them the confidence they want, but I really don't have the bandwidth or patience to listen to problems. Whereas in negativity, I now warn them that I'm not able to do that up front. And it's not that I don't care, I just cope with emotional stuff differently. Not ideal, but better than being insincere. Have you a better suggestion? Great question. Is that you? That's Kay.
We have, because it's not only expected that when someone's got a problem, someone will help us. It's also expected that when someone has a problem, we will help. So one of the beautiful things about our species is that we will help each other. And therein can lie a problem, because it's expected and often can create more of a problem. Like this rolling thing of trying to take away so your kids don't have to have the problems that you
Pain
have.
and suffering, yeah.
All you're doing is putting them into a whole world of different problems that you're not equipped for.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to sort of people wanting to talk at you, Kay, it is about boundaries. It is about sort of being able to, in the nicest way possible, explain to people that, do you know what, you really like spending time with them and you want to do things, but you can't solve their problems, and that's not what you're there for.
Yeah. And you're not serving people by trying to be, trying to take their pain away and not have them do it for themselves. They're taking their responsibility for themselves away.
And there's no only there saying that you attract neurotic friends that think that you can give them the confidence they want. That isn't necessarily what they want. They just want somebody to talk at. And it's that usually stems from somebody who has a lot of low self-confidence, which is a bit of a surprise to people when they understand that is the sign of a huge ego. Because we think if someone's got a big ego, it's because, someone who's really confident, really loves themselves, has got a big ego. It's actually the other way around. Someone who's very, very insecure has actually got a huge ego, because their software has completely taken over and is trying to prevent them doing anything. That is actually a big ego. It's the other way around than we think. So it's not, that is not what you're there for. And it's actually not about you, it's about them. Yeah. And I think somebody who wants you to be there as a sounding board all the time and just to listen.
It's so bloody draining, isn't it? If that's not, I mean, if you've got someone who really genuinely needs help and they need your time for like a long period of time, cool. But if that's not a reciprocal, balanced relationship, then that is just...
For sure. If you've had an hour and a half conversation with somebody and they are yet to ask you anything about your life, they've only talked about theirs, have a look.
Yeah. So I feel now so we've done some good stuff. We've got some amazing ground there, as always, and as expected. Bloody brilliant conversation and some cracking comments as well from people. Thank you.
Really nice comments.
Keep them coming if you've got questions as well for us, or for Ripley specifically, or me specifically. Then do it. Chuck them in there. But I do feel like at this moment we need to talk about chicken, trumpet, and jazz duck, because we promised that.
It's really essential, and it's something that we've. We were talking before about narrative being our primary form of communication, and that might be the case. That might be the case for most people. We have developed and chosen a method of chicken trumpeteering as a communication method, and Emma and I speak to each other quite often, but voice message. We voice message a lot. I love voice messaging. Why? It's just a joyful thing, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
It's amazing how many times I will go to actually give Emma information or ask her a question or something, and that goes completely by the by, because I just drop straight into chicken trumpet, which is and sometimes I'll do it and I'll think that's gone on long enough, and then you keep it going for a bit longer, and you have to ad lib it. You have to just jazz it, don't you?
It's full on like organic.
Out, and then we usually give it a genre or a label.
Yeah.
New Orleans edition. The cats come out.
So today we've had a development in the conceptual bird sort of collection, we've actually accidentally introduced Jazz Duck to the repertoire of communication style. Jazz Duck. So, who's got a suggestion as to what kind of animals, particularly birds, I think, that we should, kind of introduce?
Both Chicken Trumpet and Jazz Duck has look what's happened. Cat anus.
Jackie, here it comes. Jackie.
You're literally about to see, possibly. Yeah, look, it looks like a tentacle.
Hi, Jackie.
No.
So cute.
That's a first.
Ray Stevens' classic Cluck, a Glenn Miller spoof record from the 70s. Amazing.
That's niche, isn't it? That's niche. Because the interesting thing is, I don't know if you've actually heard at the time that we started to hear Chicken Trumpet, the cat has started meowing, and you might be able to hear this soft classical guitar stylings of Mark in the background practicing.
Hey, good old dude.
Not now mention it. And now Jackie, what? She's turned into a banshee. She's been very sedate. It's like, oh, little Jackie, she's got such gentle energy, and now she's turned into a proper little Tasmanian devil.
Wow, she's been unleashed.
She did a mystery spew yesterday. So I was on a Zoom with somebody, and she did the thing that you hear is the sound that every cat owner dreads.
Every dog owner too, trust me.
Yeah, and I looked down, I'm like, God, I'm like, Jackie, because I thought, she's on laminate. Jackie, and she went, oh no, up the stairs. And I'm thinking, no, don't. Carried on towards the bedroom, and I'm like, I'm sitting here going, I can hear you. Then you hear the inevitable production sound at the end, and I'm like, right. So I've got the kitchen roll up again. Haven't found it. I heard a spew. Did not find a spew.
Oh no.
No sign of a spew.
No. See, Percy has a definite surface preference for carpet when he's going to do anything that he shouldn't be doing like that. But when he goes, his whole body ripples.
Oh yeah, it's like when you see him on TikTok.
I'm like chasing him out of the bedroom onto the laminate, going, "Get out! Come on, get out! Get out!" And he's going, my foot's up in car.
Love that.
So there we go. Light and shade as always.
Yeah.
What a cracking talk! I've really enjoyed that.
Always fun.
It is always fun. Who knows what will come in our on our radar soon for us to talk about. So just to remind everybody, Ripley has a fantastic group called UK Witches Circle. I know some of you have been hanging out in Rebels because of...
We have crossed over. We have people that are in both.
We have got cross-contamination. And also your Instagram. How do people find you on Instagram? Because your Instagram game is so bloody good.
Thank you, madam. So it's Smoky Quartz Readings, or one word.
Smoky Quartz Readings, and Smoky has an EY on it, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and you would do things like daily cards and stuff like that.
Yeah, all that sort of thing that you'll see, at least once a day. We pull a few cards and a few bits and pieces that you can read, and sort of, if you see them, they are for you. Yeah,
that often happens to me. It's spookily synchronistic. And I know a lot of people feel the same way. So do Ripley a follow on the various platforms. And ask questions after this. We're going to be putting this up as a recording in UK Witches Circle. Obviously, it's here in Rebels. If you're not already in Rebels and you're watching this on my personal page,
I can't work out. I think I'm pointing to a logo. I might not be.
Who knows? And also, this is going to be on the YouTube channel, the Chief Rebel YouTube channel, so give us a little subscribe on there, please. That would be good. But thank you, my good friend, an amazing woman of power and skill.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Oh, thank you. And
Scene.
And thank you everybody who's contributed tonight. It's been really, really good to see your comments, and we will see you in another live soon.
Goodbye.
Give us a wave.
Bonsoir.
And goodbye.
And goodbye. Goodbye.